my name is Paulina.
And I'm Andi.
And we're Pondi! Yeah! All right, so on today's episode, we are going to be talking about what is IFS, what are parts. We're going to give some explanations on those, how we integrate that in our therapy sessions, and how do you apply it in our daily lives.
Yeah. We do want to just share that we're coming from, this podcast's intention is to come from our personal experiences and what IFS means to us. This is not meant to be a form of therapy. Our intention here is just to offer a really playful way to self-discovery and a way to implement a mindfulness into your daily life. We encourage you to seek professional help if you're struggling to cope with your mental health or experiencing any overwhelming emotions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is IFS? And to break it down in the most simplest way is we all have a self, like capital S self. That is the center of our being. It's our core. It's a very freeing place. Right? And then we also have like different parts of us, different parts of our personality.
From an IFS defined place, self is essentially the deepest essence, and we're taking this right out of the IFS handbook. So self is the deepest essence or center of every person. When differentiated, self acts as a wise, compassionate leader, able to heal and lead the system. And everybody has access to self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And some of the qualities of self-energy, when you know you are, where you can gauge that you're in self-energy, is when you're feeling curious, there's a sense of calmness, compassion, clarity, courage, creativity, confidence, and connectedness.
Yeah, the 8 C's is what they call it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the parts that Paulina was talking about are kind of broken down into 3 categories. IFS calls them managers, firefighters, and exiles. Managers are the protectors in our system. They're also kind of like some of the roles we play in our life. And they act to keep the person feeling secure by controlling people, events, and other parts. They carry huge burdens of responsibility for keeping life together and fear that relinquishing control will lead to much worse outcomes. They protect against anything that leads to vulnerability, pain, or instability. Never again is their motto.
Yeah, so some common manager behaviors could be a controlling part, an analytical part, a part that's criticizing, judgmental part, a caretaking part, a part that's a planner or numbs you out, or a pessimistic part.
Yeah, thanks, P.
Yeah, so those fall all under the managers.
Yes, and just a side note, you guys are going to hear me, Andi, refer to Paulina as P a lot. So it's the P in Pondi.
Great.
Firefighters.
Ooh, these are my favorites.
I knew you were going to say that.
Okay.
These protectors spring into action whenever pain from other parts, especially the more wounded exiles, get activated or threaten to overwhelm. Firefighters act powerfully and automatically to repress the emerging exiles, which we'll get to. The exiles' pressure, and then to get out of danger fast. They can overpower managers' efforts to control the system. Their motto is, when all else fails.
Yeah, so firefighters come in when they feel like managers aren't doing their jobs, or the managers are getting overwhelmed and cannot effectively perform their jobs. So yeah, they come in when all else fails. So some of the common firefighter behaviors and traits could be abuse, substance abuse, attempting suicide, binging on food, eating disorders, so overspending, having affairs, disassociating, distractions, cutting, etc.
Yeah. they really do have good intentions to help the system.
Yeah.
They oftentimes don't realize that in their way of doing that, it actually can be really harmful to the system.
Right. Yeah. And at one point, the way in which they're trying to calm the system probably worked. That's why they keep doing it. But then it gets to a point where it isn't effective anymore for the system.
Yeah. Well, and what's side note about this, firefighters can often activate the addiction aspect of our brain.
Yes.
And as soon as that has activated, their intention completely, I mean, it just, your brain chemicals now taking over to where being able to manage these parts becomes a lot more challenging. Yeah. Okay, exiles, defined again from the IFS book. These parts have been rejected or traumatized, and they're holding deep wounds and memories filled with terror, pain, and shame. Young and childlike, often frozen in time and hiding for protection. They become increasingly extreme to share their story. They leave the person feeling exposed and vulnerable, something that the protectors fear will destabilize the system. Don't forget me is their motto.
Yeah.
I know.
So some of the common exile behaviors would be sensitivity, anger, dependency, innocence, spontaneity, and openness.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you use this in therapy?
Let's see. These parts, okay, so when I'm in therapy, oftentimes I will what we call go inside, and that's where you are essentially meditating with your parts. So in a really brief explanation, we access self. If we aren't quite there, we take a minute to really like settle in, access self energy, and then just start to, from that place, start to meditate with your parts. You're really sitting there holding a space of listening and witnessing and going down different trails with these parts and letting them just tell their story and be held, and then self has the opportunity to unburden them of whatever, strong role that they're trying to do for you, when they don't realize that they don't really need to do that anymore. That's kind of like a brief therapeutic aspect of what we do.
It's like a moment to get into our bodies, get into self energy, and then invite parts, a moment to invite parts to express anything that needs to be said. And again, this is the point. This is kind of where we can emphasize too that any deep emotions, any major trauma that you've been through, this is where having a professional guide you to do this just really emphasizes a sense of safety, and I guess it's just really important to emphasize that right now. Just when you do this kind of work. But there is an aspect of like mindfulness that you can also incorporate this work in. How about for you, P? What do you does that land for you as far as the therapy, how you use it in therapy? Do the same style. Anything you want to add? So I like going to sessions really feeling who's driving the bus, essentially, like in IFS.
Yes.
It's always asking like which part is driving the bus. And so I can come in with feeling that something maybe have happened that week, and maybe anger is driving the bus, and I just cannot get over the mind chatter of the anger, and it's that ruminating thoughts and the ruminating story, and the story just going on repeat. And so I know before getting into a session that this part is driving the bus for my system.
Yeah, I love that. And we may have talked about this before, but just to share a little bit more about what the bus is. So if you think of your body as a system, and your mind, body, spirit, all the things, if you think of it as a system, the system is a bus, like an actual bus. And the idea is to have self driving your bus, self being that ultimate leader, that ultimate guide, right? In the front of the bus driving it. And then all of your parts, all the parts of your personality are in their seats of the bus. They're important because they have important pieces of your story, of your, life experiences. And they're going to have lots to say about most life interactions and experiences, right?
Yeah.
But when you essentially get triggered, that part takes over the driver's seat.
Yeah.
Now you're in your nervous system's like dysregulated. That part has taken over the driver's seat and it's driving your bus.
Yep.
So the idea is to regulate your nervous system, and by doing that, it actually puts that part back into its seat, self back in the driver's seat. And now you can have that space to really hear what that part was trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Anything you want to add on that? I really nerd out in that. I love the bus.
I know. I think you did a great explanation of the bus.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for adding that in. Okay.
So how do you apply this then to your daily life outside of, your own sessions?
How do we do that? How do we do that, P? Well, first, I think it's really important that we probably share like how to connect to self, right? Because then you can really incorporate a mindfulness. And that's how, for me, that's what IFS has essentially done for me. I've gone to a therapist to work through some of my past stuff that I really needed to, work through. And then in the end, I walk away from that with this like mindfulness that I've incorporated into my life. How about for you?
Yeah, I think the concept of self and parts is the core of IFS and is what significantly impacted me and how I respond in life now. Because I know if I am anything outside of self, which is anything outside of connectedness, creativity, of centeredness, then I know I'm in a part.
Yeah.
And being able to witness the parts, like, oh, okay, I'm in an emotion right now, or I'm in a part right now, and either acknowledging that and being okay with that and sitting with that part, or bringing in some more self energy. That is the whole work for me in applying IFS in my life.
Yeah. That I'm so glad you shared that. That brought up like a point I really want to make about parts, not like, oh, I love this because Dick Schwartz is the creator of IFS and he has a book, No Bad Parts. And I really want to emphasize there really are no bad parts. They all have good intentions. The way that they can ultimately carry burdens and then show up in your life can essentially, maybe the behavior or the action of the part isn't aligned with who you want to be and how you want to show up. So I really love to emphasize that because there is a piece of acceptance and getting to know your parts. Like you need that acceptance, right? And like understanding and compassion towards these parts to understand how they're to basically change the behavior, help unburden them. We'll get into burdens and unburdened parts on another episode, but okay, I am curious, P, what are some ways that you access self?
Good question. Some of the ways I access self is through breath work. Yeah, breath work is a really fast way for me to allow my parts, my managers, my, any stress or activated parts just fall off and sit next to me, sit aside, and then I can access self. Being out in nature. I think even like being with family can get me into self. How about you? Exercising.
Yes, running is a huge one for me. Running is like anytime I have a heightened emotion, I know if I go out on a run, if I have the ability to, and that at that time, then I can really access a lot of self-energy, and then just hold space during my run to really listen to what's coming up. So running for sure, exercise absolutely. I remember, and when I started this whole journey with my therapist, she used, I may have shared this with you before, but she guided me to like visualize the ocean floor. Have I shared that one? Yeah. So there's times where you can't access ways to regulate.
To go running,
right?
All of a sudden, right?
Yeah, or breath work.
Yes.
Yeah, that one's a little bit. You can do small like mini sessions, you know, but yeah, there's just times that you can't access it in that moment. Yeah. So what can you do essentially to regulate your nervous system and separate that part that you're in and come back to self?
So your visual is the ocean floor.
There's essentially just to take myself, visualize myself in the ocean, going underwater, and then laying on the ocean floor and just watching the waves pass over, right? And those waves represent the chatter in your head. They represent the, you know, all the different parts that are trying to tell you something. Yeah. And it just kind of creates this separation. I have a part.
I'm thinking about your ocean floor now.
Oh, yeah. You feel it?
Yes, I do.
Paulina's feeling it right now. I have this one impulsive part that like can go 0 to 100. She's a firecracker. I think of her as like part of my Portuguese blood line, you know, and she just has this, like, she's such a reactor and so quick to respond. And sometimes it's not conducive in relationships or, you know, just not how I want to show up. I love her passion, but also she can be very impulsive and go from like calm to like, whatever. Anyway. So she, sure, for lack of better terms at this moment. Anyway, heightened. We'll just say 0 to heightened. All right. She has been like, that's how the ocean floor visualization is how I really started to bring more self energy to her. And then I was able to build a relationship with her and understand this part of me and why she shows up and what she's passionate about, but without her taking over and creating a really like uncomfortable environment. You know?
I kind of forgot mine now that you shared with us about the ocean thing. But my go-to visually was always Alaska.
Oh, right.
I know. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Which is so beautiful how powerful IFS is, because before it took, you know, different ways like visualization of visualizing in my head to get there. And then now it's more of a feeling because I've been more connected with coming back to my body quicker into self. You know? So it's cool to have different ways to get there.
So we do want to say this hasn't been easy. We had to be intentional with this mindfulness and trying to like slow down. And that's not natural when your parts have been kind of driving your bus your whole life, you know? Okay,
and you don't know how self feels like until you're intentional about, that's self. Yes.
Right.
What is self? How do you get there? You know? Oh, okay, you can do it through visualization. Got it. You know? And then after you do that so many times, then you start to connect the wires of like, okay, I'm in self, I feel self, you know, so that's like, it's really powerful.
Oh my gosh. And the feeling, like IFS is all about experiencing the feeling. So every individual is going to access their self energy differently. So where do you find yourself in what you're doing? How do you access that calm or that I don't even know how to describe that energetic, right? Like, how can we help our listeners just start to explore how to find their self? What do you think?
I mean, what are some examples, right?
I'm essentially something that you really love to do where you feel free and calm, but also exhilarated. You know, like there can be excitement.
Yes.
It's this feeling in your body that we want you to connect to.
It's It's like touching a puppy.
Oh my
I
gosh.
feel like,
Holding
right?
a baby.
Holding a baby. Yeah.
Yes.
Watching a sunset.
Oh my gosh. When you're just so still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like a bliss
Mm-hmm.
feeling.
Yeah. Okay, so going back to Alaska,
Uh-huh.
how do you access that self energy through visualizing Alaska?
Alaska, there was one time I was visiting my sister and her husband and my nephew, and they'd taken me to this where, I mean, I think it used to be a lake, but because it was iced over, it was in the winter, so the sun was up
Mm-hmm.
and it was reflecting onto the ice.
Oh my gosh.
And unless it was water, whatever it was, I don't remember what season or what time I was there.
Yeah.
So anyways, I just remember it was my first time there and just seeing the mountains and the sun reflecting back onto the ground. And there was no buildings that was obstructing my view.
Oh yeah.
So I felt like I needed like those spider's eyes or something like that. Like I needed a panoramic eyeballs
to just
because
take
I couldn't.
it all
I
in.
couldn't soak it all in, and so I just had this like an feel, and it was just I was engulfed by Mother Nature and love, and I felt so significant yet insignificant, and it was just
gosh.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like seeing a whale.
Yeah.
You know?
And like, what do you feel in your body when you're having that? Like, what is that like for you?
Oh,
When you're in that moment.
I feel so connected
Yes.
to everything.
Yeah.
And
is there a lightness in your body? Oh my gosh, me too. Whenever I'm in self, there's just this like airy flow underneath, like all within me. I can't even describe it. Still,
right?
yeah.
Free
Your breath is being taken, like
yeah.
but you're still fully breathing and living. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Gosh, is there anything else really to add? I really just love that this has turned into kind of like how to access self.
Yeah.
And really maybe offering our listeners just to set an intention to start exploring how you access self.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's a good
foundational place to leave on.
Yep.
Well, we just want to thank you all for listening and, just hanging out with us today.
Yeah, and then we look forward to the next podcast where we can get more into parts.
Ooh, maybe, yes.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, let's
cool.
go into, like, different parts of us that are, like, roles in our life. Just normal roles that we play in our daily life and, like, how they can kind of take over at times. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that would be a fun one.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, guys. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.